How's it going, everybody? PowerShell Nerd here, ready to hit the shell again, dropping a lot more content soon. Today we're going to be focusing on those PowerShell profiles, specifically what profiles are, how they're different between different IDEs and PowerShell, how to create those profiles, the gotchas when you're using profiles and scripts, other things like creating aliases in your profile, using the prompt function that's built in. We'll talk about quick navigation techniques. We'll talk about the default parameter values, and we'll talk about changing the colors of error codes to make it easier to read. So without further ado, let's hit the shell. Alright, so first we're going to get started with profiles. What are profiles? A profile basically is a PS1 file that loads when you open PowerShell. Now again, profiles are different across environments, so I'm going to show you that real fast. So if I open up PowerShell, and I do $profile, and I press tab, I'll zoom in a little bit, and I hit enter. The profile is just a PS1 file that lives in the Windows PowerShell folder. If I go out here, natively you usually don't have this folder. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this because I was doing testing earlier. So natively you don't have this folder. And what we're going to do is we're going to create that profile. But before we do, I want to show you the differences between IDEs. So here is the PowerShell profile for PowerShell. But if we look at PowerShell ISE, it has a profile, but it says ISE in the name. It's a different PS1 file that's in the same directory. The same goes for VS Code. If we were to look at profile here, you can see this one is VS Code. So when you're making custom profiles, if you want it to be consistent across all your environments, you're going to need to make sure that each profile has the same content. I personally don't use VS Code's terminal unless I'm debugging code and I'm in the weeds, but usually I just have a PowerShell window open like this and I test my code in this PowerShell window. So it's really just personal preference. I do that because I know my code usually runs in a brand new PowerShell window when you run a script and stuff. So I want a brand new clean environment. So I usually just pop open a brand new PowerShell window so I don't have variables lingering and stuff like that. So next thing is creating a profile. So again, it's just a PS1 file and we have the path and the name of the file. So you just literally use new item and you create that file. And the force will force it to create the directory structure since it's multiple folders deep. And if you get errors without the force, then just use the force basically. Be a Jedi. All right, there we go. We used the force. Now if we come back out here, we look, there's our folder. And here's our PowerShell profile. So now what we can do is we can open that with code, or VS Code. If we type in code and profile, pop that open. We'll go ahead and throw that to the right, close this one out. And we'll get started with aliases. So aliases are nice to use when you type long commands all the time and you want shortcuts, or if you open certain programs. So here, we'll set an alias for LL to do get child item. So basically, instead of having to type get child item like this, obviously you could use the built-in alias GCI and it will do the same thing, or you can make your own alias. So we'll do LL for that. And then we'll make another alias called NP for opening up Notepad. So I'll go ahead and save this file. And now PowerShell profiles load when you open the PowerShell console. So we'll open up a new console. I'll go ahead and close this one. And then we'll test out our new aliases that we created. So we'll do Notepad first. We'll press NP, enter, and there's Notepad. Pretty cool, huh? So, and then LL, we'll list out the contents. So you can make your own custom aliases. The only thing to remember, kind of going back to the PowerShell gotchas of profiles, is if you get used to these aliases and you start putting them in scripts, obviously they're not going to work for other people. Also, when we get down to default parameters, those can kind of mess you up too if you're writing scripts, and you'll see why later on. The next thing we're going to talk about is the prompt function. So in the prompt function, it's really cool. I like it a lot. You can customize your prompt. I'm a big fan of it. I'm going to go ahead and comment some stuff out of here so you don't see certain things, and then we'll change it. So basically what prompt does is it runs every time you hit enter. It's calling the prompt. And so we could add custom context to the prompt. So every time you press enter, this code will run. And it's going to run basically get location. It's going to get the current location. It's going to write to the screen. It's going to write your current username. It's going to put an at bracket or at symbol. It's going to put the computer name. It's going to put a square bracket with a space. Then we're going to change the foreground color to cyan. We're going to say no new line. So the next thing down will be on the same line. We're also going to write the location. We're going to do a space, the greater than sign. And then we're going to do foreground color green, no new line. And then this empty return. And so if I take this, I put it over here, and then we open a new PowerShell window, there's our new prompt. This is our new prompt that we have. So every time you hit enter, that code's being ran. If I cd to C:, notice it changed. This is pretty cool, nice and useful. I'm not a fan of it just because I don't like a long prompt. So I'm going to show you what I do to customize this even further. So what I like to do is I don't like the path here. And so what we'll do is we'll comment this out and we'll comment this out. We'll keep the return. Actually, we'll go ahead and comment the return out too. And then I'm just going to do right host with this bracket. So this is going to be my prompt. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to change the window title to the location. So if I take this, paste it in here, save it, and then we open up a new PowerShell window. If you look up top, you can see our path is up here. So if I cd to C:, cd to C users administrator or Windows Power or Microsoft Windows Power, let's see what we got here. Yeah, there we go. We'll go to app data. You can see this whole path is up here up top. So you have more screen to work on basically. I'm a fan of this. So it's really your personal preference. Honestly, you know, you can technically comment this right host out and change it to a return. I believe that will probably get rid of the PS that you see on the screen when I'm doing that. So if we go ahead and launch a new one. Nope. I forget why that PS is showing up. But it's something to do with the right host for sure. Or the return, the way the return is. I think it's something with just that character. All right, let's go ahead and move on. We'll move on to basically quick navigation. So this is a really cool technique. So for me, let's say I'm on my computer and I have a repos folder where I'm putting all my stuff. I have a scripts folder where I'm putting all my scripts. And I always have to change this directory, and I'm always doing cd, user, documents. I think it's kind of, boring. You can basically just add these functions in here, and these functions specifically, obviously you can break them out off one line. They're just on one line, doesn't matter. It's in your profile. So now we have go get repos and we have go scripts, and all it's doing is just doing set location to those directories. So let's go ahead and kill off some of these PowerShell windows, and then we'll go ahead and open up a new PowerShell window. And then obviously if you look in our title, right now we're in the C directory. And if I do go get repo, boom, we're in our repos. Go scripts, we're in our scripts folder. So it's a cool technique, especially if you're doing things commonly. If you're doing like PowerShell remoting on other machines and stuff like that, you could do the similar things there to make it easier to go to like registry settings or anything there might be there. So you can do that. Now moving on, we're going to be talking about default parameter sets. So this is one of my favorite things to use. Default parameter sets are pretty cool. Basically, if you're using a parameter all the time with a command, you can put it in your default parameter sets. One that's not listed here, but I can always show later on for sure, is like for get AD user. If you use that all the time, you're always doing dash properties, and you're probably looking at the locked out or enabled. Well, enabled's default, but you're probably looking at locked out or password last set. You can actually add those as default parameters in your profile, and then every time you do get AD user, those will show up by default. No more doing dash properties. But again, those gotchas is if you're writing scripts and you get used to that and you forget to do the properties and selecting those fields, other users are going to have different outcomes with those scripts. So here we're going to show you just some simple ones. This one's get help on show window. So by default, if I do get service and then let's say I want to get help on that, it'll print it out to the screen. You can do dash online, and that will actually take you to the online Microsoft documentation for Git service for the help for it. That's a cool technique to do. You can also do like examples and stuff like that. But I like to do show window. And when I do show window, it opens up this new window. And basically, as I'm scripting, I can kind of read through the documentation. So I'm not scrolling up and down on my PowerShell window, going up to the help, or keep typing get help. I just kind of have it over there on the side, and I can see what parameters I have available. So I like using that a lot. So I put that in my PowerShell profile. Another big one is export CSV - no type information. If you ever use this export CSV, you should know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you're going to thank me later. So we'll go ahead and do Git service. And I'm going to export -CSV. And we'll do it services.csv. Now, I don't have Microsoft Office installed on this machine right now. But if I open this up in code, you're going to see if it was a spreadsheet, the very top line is supposed to be your column headers. Obviously, you see row 2 is your column headers, and you have this type information. This is going to be in that spreadsheet when you open that CSV file up. It's super annoying. The way to get rid of it is no type information. So if I close this out, and we go ahead and run that command again, and then I add the parameter -no type information, and then we open that back up, you notice that line's gone. So that's why that line's there if you never knew why it was there. That's how you get rid of it. And then never have to use that parameter again if you use this in your profile. The last thing you have to do though with those default parameters is you have to put it into the PS default parameters built-in variable. So we'll go ahead and copy this. We'll go ahead and throw it over here in this PowerShell profile. We'll save. We'll open up PowerShell. We'll do that get help and that get service again, and we're going to see it open up in that new window. And there we go. Also with the export CSV, we can do get service again, and then we'll say export -CSV C:services to overwrite it. Actually, we'll just do services new, so we know for sure, and then we'll do code C services new, and there it is. No type information is there. You can do some really cool stuff with default parameters, so I'm a big fan of it and I highly recommend it. Last but not least, error messages. I don't know about you, and maybe it's just how my brain works, but I always have issues reading these red error messages. It's just hard on the eyes, I feel like. I also feel like I read the errors a lot better when they're a different color. I personally prefer black and green. I don't know why, but it's easier to read for me. So this is how you change those error colors. So we can go ahead and throw this in our PowerShell profile, save it. We'll open up a new PowerShell window. And an inside joke for me is when I'm teaching friends PowerShell, or I see someone working on PowerShell and I just see all this red on the screen, I always joke and be like, man, you're bleeding all over the screen. You need to fix your stuff. But to me, it's also they're learning. They're trying to figure something out, which is always a plus. On my screen, this is what you would see. Bright green. You can read it well. You can see its spelling. It just stands out. I like it a lot better. Obviously, you can change it to whatever you want. I just like black and green. So that's it. That's PowerShell profiles in a nutshell. I hope you learned something. Hopefully you took something away. If you have anything you use in your profiles, put it in the comments below. If you have suggestions, put it in the comments. If you have any recommendations on videos, put it in the comments. Always don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.